factor in the fight or flight response is what causes you to become anxious, balancing capabilities. Shortly after reading your resume, those who are physically nearest to us because of this. Sometimes it's not a matter of swaying a person to your side. Most exciting. You should know that we're not talking about tricks that work sometimes on some people. This book contains only specific psychological tactics governing human behavior that will let you outsmart, outthink, and outmaneuver anyone, any place, anytime. These are carefully formulated tactics based on specific psychological principles and can be applied to any situation. Imagine how easy life would be if you were able to predict and control the outcome of any encounter. And instead of wondering what was going to happen, you applied proven, fast-working psychological tactics to gain complete and total cooperation from all people in any situation. Have you ever asked someone to help you out and, much to your surprise, she happily obliged? Or perhaps you wanted to make a good impression and the person found you completely irresistible. You wonder if it was luck, the person's mood, or the situation, when in actuality, you likely applied principles that govern human behavior without even knowing it. The good news is that you can duplicate those same responses systematically anytime you want with anyone. To make it easy for you to learn how to apply these psychological secrets, this audiobook is divided into 40 mini-chapters, each governing various real-life situations. And best of all, once you become familiar with the psychological principles, you'll see that you can use the techniques to be successful anytime, in any situation that you find yourself in. Get ready to make life easy and have things go your way when you get anyone to do anything and never feel powerless again. The secrets inside and how to use them. The greatest collection of psychological tactics to make everything go your way. If you wanted to make life easy, what would be on your wish list? Maybe in every area of life you know how to avoid ever being taken advantage of or manipulated, are able to end verbal conflicts with a single phrase, understand how to lead, influence, and motivate anyone to your way of thinking, and are able to become anything to anyone by winning friends and changing instantly how others see you. In short, you'd have a life made easy. You're about to learn how to use the greatest psychological techniques for success in every area of your life. Section 1. Get anyone to like you, love you, or just plain think you're great. If you want to be successful in life, you often need to get cooperation from other people. And the number one rule for getting people to do what you want is to get them to like you. Whether you want to make a new friend or gain an ally, these psychological tactics show you step by step how to get anyone to think you're great. Plus, in romantic situations, you'll discover how to get anyone to find you irresistibly attractive. And once you're in the relationship, you'll be able to apply the greatest secrets for always having the upper hand. Section 2. Never be fooled, tricked, manipulated, used, lied to, or taken advantage of again. If you want to make life go your way, you, of course, want to avoid being manipulated and fooled by people who don't have your best interests at heart. You would need to see through people and easily tell who is out for you and who is out to get you. In this section, you'll learn psychological tactics to determine almost instantly if someone is trying to take advantage of you. Whether it's personal or professional, you never have to get that helpless feeling of trusting the wrong person again. Section 3. Take control of any situation and get anyone to do anything. Now, to really make things go your way, you're going to need to control certain situations. Here, you'll learn how to easily influence others to your way of thinking. Get anyone to understand, agree with, and then do what you want. Learn the secrets to getting a single person or an entire group to trust, believe, and follow you. Whether it's changing one person's opinion or leading a crowd, you'll use the latest and most advanced tools governing human nature to make people go your way. Section 4. how to win at any competition, beat out anyone for the job, for the date, or for the game. Sometimes it's not a matter of swaying a person to your side, when, for instance, you are competing with someone for the same thing. You will learn the greatest psychological techniques for winning at any competition. Whether it's a tennis match, a job promotion, or even a date, when it's you against him, you'll win. In this section, you'll learn how to make your mind your greatest weapon and become the perfect psychological warrior. Section 5. Make life easy. Learn how to instantly take life's most annoying, frustrating, and difficult situations and get the upper hand every time. Wouldn't it be great if everyone was as nice and pleasant as you? Sure it would, but some people aren't, and they just get under our skin. So, for life's little nuisances, this section gives you an array of tactics where a little psychology goes a long way. Whether you want a phone call returned or you want someone to forgive you, these techniques work to make life easy. Note to listeners: because these techniques are based on human nature, factors such as culture, race, and gender are negligible, unless otherwise noted. Throughout all of the examples in this book, the pronouns he and she are used interchangeably. This was done to make the language less sexist, not to indicate that the technique is gender-specific. Section 1. Get anyone to like you, love you, or just plain think you're great. Here you will discover those psychological factors that influence the levels of interest other people have in you. You're going to hear just how easy it is for you to get anyone to like you or dislike you. By following a simple strategy based on human nature, you can create trusting, lasting friendships and relationships with complete ease. And so we're clear, these aren't ways to manipulate other people into liking you. Rather, you'll be orchestrating the application of certain psychological principles and methodologies to bring out and develop a natural chemistry. The obvious question then is, why do I need these techniques if all I'm doing is bringing out a natural chemistry? Doesn't it stand to reason that if it's there, and if it's not, it's not? Well, that seems as if it would be so. What follows explains why the answer is no. It is in our nature as human beings to seek affiliation, to make friends, and to care about others. But sometimes it can be hard for a person to reach out and expose his or her true self and feelings. Most people want to like, want to love, want to connect, but they are afraid. Things get in the way of their innate desire. Things like fear of rejection, vulnerability, ego, and jealousy are but a few of the multitude of mixed emotions, attitudes, and beliefs that keep us from reaching out and bonding with others. What these psychological techniques do is to simply influence a person's natural state to emerge. We feel good when we give, when we love, and when we help. It's not about twisting someone's brain so that he does your unconditional bidding. It's about bringing the person's submerged desires to the surface. In this section, we cover different levels of interpersonal relations. At the core of all relationships, though, is mutual liking. No one will be attracted, for any length of time, to someone whom he doesn't like and respect. So, the tactics that follow, while separated into individual specific strategies, can and should be used together. Most important, Chapter 1, Get Anyone to Like You Every Time, is the foundation not only for this section, but for several of the chapters throughout the book. We'll talk more about the importance of this later. Chapter 1. Get anyone to like you every time. What are those elusive traits and qualities that arouse feelings of friendship and likability in a person? In just a minute, you'll discover that they're not elusive at all. In fact, they can be reduced to a simple formula that will help you to develop a natural chemistry with anyone. The fact is, we like or dislike a person based upon a strict set of mostly unconscious processes. It does not happen by chance. But the reality that we're unaware of the process makes it seem as if it occurs without much rhyme or reason. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The following is a complete list and discussion of the 9 psychological laws and phenomena that affect, influence, and even alter what we think of someone, so you can get anyone to like you. Keep in mind, too, that research shows that our liking a person can influence how physically attractive we think he or she is, and that we also tend to like more someone whom we find attractive. So this chapter and the one that follows it go hand in hand and can be used as part of an overall strategy. 1. Law of association. The law of association is discussed in more detail throughout this book, but it has a very specific application here. Briefly, by pairing yourself with pleasurable stimuli, another person will begin to associate you with this feeling. Studies conclude that if, for instance, you were planning your vacation, you would associate those favorable feelings with whoever was around you at the time, and you would subsequently like the person more. Conversely, research in this area shows us that when you have a stomach ache, for instance, those around you become unconscious victims of circumstance, and you tend to like them less. Of course, there's more to liking than just this pairing of pleasant stimuli with a person, but it can generate powerful feelings, either good or bad, toward you. So if you want to be liked by a person, try talking to him when he is in a good mood or excited about something. These feelings are anchored and associated with you, and this person will then come to have positive feelings toward you. PowerPoint. Sometimes it's easy to tell if a person's in a good mood, but if you're not sure, look at his face. If he's in a good mood, he'll likely greet you with a full smile, eyes wide open. If he greets you with a partial lips-only smile, one that does not involve his whole face, then this is a forced courtesy smile, and usually reflects a person who is not in a good mood. Eye contact is a strong indicator of mood. When we are in a good mood, we tend to make more direct eye contact. Conversely, when we're in a bad mood, we tend to look down or away from the person we're speaking to. 2. Repeat exposure. The old adage, familiarity breeds contempt, is commonly accepted, but interestingly enough, it's not true. In reality, it's the opposite. Numerous studies conclude that the more you interact with someone, the more he or she will like you. According to Moreland and Zajonc, 1982, repeated exposure to any stimulus, in this case a person, leads to a greater appreciation and liking as long as the initial reaction is not negative. This is true of anything, a person, a place, or even a product. The greater the exposure, the more positive the response. This is why companies sometimes advertise just a picture of a product or its name without any specific features or benefits of using the product. They don't need to tell us how wonderful it is, only remind us of it. Exposure, being an obvious component of repetition, can alone increase sales or votes, which is why advertisers and politicians exploit this phenomenon. This factor of human behavior is so powerful that studies show that even a letter in the alphabet that also appears in our name is perceived as more attractive than a letter that is not in our name. By simply being around more, you will actually grow on this person. Sometimes we make the mistake of trying to appear mysterious, aloof, or unavailable to someone, but in doing so, we diminish our number of interactions. Studies conclude that we become friends with, and tend to like more, those who are physically nearest to us because of this increased level of interaction. By the way, you don't have to worry about enacting the law of scarcity unless you want this person to be attracted to you. That is because the basis of liking follows a different paradigm than for attraction. We will learn more about that law in this section. 3. Reciprocal affection. Countless studies and common sense have established that we tend to like more those who like us. When we find out that someone thinks well of us, we in turn are unconsciously driven to find him or her more likable as well. Therefore, you want to let your target person know that you like and respect him, if indeed you do. PowerPoint. What if he really doesn't like me at all? Oddly enough, studies conclude that If he started out not liking you and gradually came around to liking you, he will eventually like you more than if he had liked you right from the beginning. Keep in mind, if you don't have a great relationship with him, don't do a 180, suddenly making this person your best friend. Studies show us that gradual liking is infinitely more effective than instantly becoming someone's best friend. So don't be overwhelming and out of the blue his number one fan. To engage the law of reciprocal affection gradually, let it be known that you are fond of this person. 4. Similarities. It is not true that opposites attract. We actually like more those people who are similar to us and who have similar interests. We may find someone interesting because of how different he is from us, but it's the similarities and commonalities that generate mutual liking. Like attracts like. When you speak to this person, talk about what you both enjoy and what you have in common. Similar to this law is the principle of comrades in arms. Essentially, people who go through life-changing situations together tend to create a significant bond. For instance, soldiers in battle, or those in fraternity pledge classes, who get hazed together, usually develop strong friendships. This is also a powerful bonding method, even if the experience was not shared, but similarly experienced. It's for this reason that two people who have never met, but who have shared a similar previous experience, whether it's an illness or winning the lottery, can become instant friends. It is the "she understands me" perspective that generates these warm feelings for another who has had a similar experience. It all comes down to the fact that we all want to be understood, and this powerful event has likely helped to shape the person into who she is today. Hence, this other person knows and understands what she is all about. 5. How you make her feel. How someone feels about you is greatly determined by how you make her feel about herself. You can spend all day trying to get her to like you and to think well of you, but it's how you make her feel when she is around you that makes the difference. Have you ever noticed how nice it is to be around someone who is complimentary and sincerely kind and warm? Conversely, have you ever thought about how annoying it is to spend 5 minutes with the person who's always finding fault with everything and everyone? These people seem to drain the life right out of you. Being the person who makes people feel good will go a long way toward their finding you quite likable. 6. Rapport. Rapport creates trust, allowing you to build a psychological bridge to someone. The conversation is likely to be more positive and comfortable when two people are in sync with each other. Just as we tend to like someone who shares our interests, we are also unconsciously driven to like a person when she appears as we do. This means that when someone makes gestures the way we do, or uses words or phrases as we do, we tend to find him likable. More on rapport-building skills is discussed throughout various chapters in the book. For now, 2 powerful tips for establishing and building rapport are matching posture and movements. For instance, if someone has one hand in his pocket, you put your hand in yours. If he makes a gesture with his hand, after a moment, and without being obvious, you casually make the same gesture. Matching speech. Try to match his rate of speech. If he's speaking in a slow, relaxed tone, you do the same. If he's speaking quickly, then you begin to speak more rapidly. 7. Helping her out. Studies in human nature show us that people dislike others more after doing them harm. Please note that I did not say that we do harm to those whom we dislike, although this may be true. The point here is that when we do harm to another, either on purpose or by accident, we are unconsciously driven to dislike the person. This is an attempt to reduce dissonance. Cognitive dissonance theory, as it applies here, states that we feel uneasy when we do something that is inconsistent with how we see ourselves. Therefore, to reduce this inner conflict, we rationalize our actions to remain consistent with our self-concept. The internal conflict created is, why did I do this to this person? The rationalization then becomes, it must be because I really don't like him and he deserves it. Otherwise, I would be a bad or careless person, and that cannot be so. This works in reverse as well. We like someone more after doing something nice for him or her. If we do someone a favor, we are likely to have positive feelings toward that person. If you can get him to do you a small favor, this will generate kind and warm feelings toward you. Often, in our attempt to get someone to like us, we make the mistake of doing nice things for him. And while he may appreciate your kindness and think you're a nice person, it doesn't make him like you more, even though you may be viewed as more likable. What you want is for him to have kind feelings toward you, not to just believe that you are a kind person. This is accomplished by him doing for you, not by you doing for him. 8. He's only human. Seeing someone you admire do something stupid or clumsy will make you like him more. Aronson, Willerman, and Floyd, 1966. Contrary to popular belief, being a perfect, confident figure will not produce the desired outcome, meaning that it rarely leads to your being liked more and thought of in a positive way. When you want to be seen as more likable, do something embarrassing and smile at yourself. Don't try to ignore it or pretend it didn't happen. Self-deprecating humor is a terrific way to ingratiate yourself with anyone. When you show others that you don't take yourself so seriously, it makes them feel closer to you and want to be around you. Nobody likes a show-off or a person who is so consumed with himself and his image that he needs to pretend that he is perfect. We tend to like and gravitate towards those who are not self-absorbed and egotistical. Showing that you can laugh at yourself makes you infinitely more approachable and likable. This is often at odds with what we think we should do. In our attempt to appear as cool and important, others perceive us as taking ourselves too seriously, and this air of false confidence can be quite unbecoming. This aspect of human nature confuses many people because the fact is that we do like confident people. We're drawn to and like those who are self-assured. But we know that a person who is confident doesn't feel the need to let the world know how great he is. He lets the world find out for itself. So the bragging, arrogant person is really a person who feels small inside, and we are often instinctively uninterested and unattracted to this person. The one who is confident and secure is the one who is apt to laugh at his own mistakes, and is not afraid to let people know that he is human. So you see, they are not at conflict with one another. Not taking ourselves so seriously and acknowledging our faults and mistakes shows the world that we are confident. 9. Positive attitude. As we talked about before, we like people who are similar to us. But there is one exception to this rule. Nobody wants to be around a moody, often pissed off, pessimistic person. We all seek, like, and admire those who have a positive, happy outlook and perspective on life. Why? Because that is what we all want. And seeing this desirable spirit in others makes us like them more. You may know a person, or may even be someone, who finds annoying those who wake up smiling and in a good mood. The fact is, though, at some level, we are drawn to that attitude and to that person. Think of the people in your life whom you really can't stand to be around. Chances are they are always complaining about something, always annoyed with somebody, always finding fault with everything. Like confidence, a positive attitude toward life will help to turn you into a superhuman magnet for attracting people and getting anyone to like you. But wait a minute. Doesn't misery love company? Actually, it does. Miserable people like to be around others who are just as annoyed with life as they are. But this quality does not make them like these people more. Someone who feels miserable enjoys commiserating and complaining with another miserable individual, but the minute he's in a good mood, he will abandon the toxic, annoying person. He seeks solace with somebody who feels as he does, but when he no longer feels that way, he will instantly leave this relationship. This is because he never liked the person, or at least not for this similarity. He enjoyed only the shared attitude. Strategy review. Be around the person as much as you can because familiarity breeds fondness, not contempt. When you speak with him, try to do it when he's in a good mood to enact the law of association. Talk about common interests or experiences that you share and try to do more of the listening and less of the talking. To enact the law of reciprocal affection, if you respect or admire him for something, make sure that he knows this. Let him do a simple favor for you, but make sure that it's not out of a sense of obligation. This creates an unconscious motivation to like you more. Build a psychological bridge and establish rapport by matching the person's gestures, rate of speech, and vocal patterns. We are drawn to confident people. Show your confidence by being able to laugh at yourself and not taking yourself too seriously. Make her feel good about herself. Be someone who is complimentary and sincerely kind and warm. Have a positive mental attitude. We are drawn to people who are excited, passionate, and happy about life and being alive. Listen to Chapter 2. Get anyone to find you irresistibly attractive, because we tend to like more those whom we find attractive, same sex or not. Chapter 2. Get anyone to find you irresistibly attractive. While we all have different physical preferences, these tactics will greatly help you to maximize your assets and, in most cases, override another person's basic idea of what he finds attractive. How can this be done? Have you ever dated someone who was not even close to your type? Why'd you do it? Because he or she enacted these laws. Most likely unwittingly, and you found that person simply irresistible. If you want to be appealing to anyone, use the techniques in the previous chapter and then move on to those in this chapter for maximum success. Numerous studies, as well as real life, show us that the more we like someone, the more attractive we tend to find him or her. Although the following tactics are especially designed for romantic interest, it should be said that we rarely find attractive those whom we do not like. So, fold into your game plan the tactics in the preceding chapter to give you an unstoppable overall strategy. 1. Emotion arousal. This single tactic will be responsible for getting you more dates than any hairstyle or outfit or high-powered job ever will. It is a foundation of human behavior that when our body produces adrenaline, feelings of attraction to those present and sexual desire often result. Adrenaline, produced through any state of heightened arousal, fear, excitement, exercise, or whatever, generates and intensifies passionate feelings. This assumes that attraction exists in some form, at some level. Anytime a person is aroused, such as with scary movies, amusement park rides, or even physical exercise, his arousal will in part be attributed to whomever he is with. In effect, there is a transference of state where the excitement he feels gets unconsciously translated into sexual desire and arousal. The next time you see a couple who appears to be aesthetically mismatched, ask where they met. Chances are good that they met under circumstances where arousal was high, maybe at the gym, or while one person, the better looking of the two, was apprehensive, nervous, or excited about something. PowerPoint. It's for this very fact that psychologists are becoming increasingly disturbed by the trend, in video games, movies, and television, of associating violence and sex. The pairing of these two stimuli, sexual content and violence, can generate enhanced arousal toward violence and aggressive tendencies in sexual encounters. 2. Walking styles. Youth is often deemed to be a factor of physical attractiveness, but the good news is that you don't necessarily have to look young, but merely appear young. Even something as seemingly innocuous as posture and how a person walks plays a powerful role in how youthful we judge him. Walking styles definitely influence physical attractiveness. People react more favorably to those whose walking style seems youthful than to those who seem elderly, regardless of the actual age or sex. Montpere and Zebrowitz-McArthur, 1988. What exactly determines youthful posture and gait? Flexibility. Observe a small child and note how flexible she is in comparison to an elderly person. Yoga will greatly improve your flexibility and will make a dramatic difference in your overall posture, walking style, and how attractive others perceive you to be. PowerPoint. There are several popular theories on why we are attracted to youth. The most widely accepted is that this is a biological instinct courtesy of our ancestors. Women who have youthful features are likely to be of childbearing age, considered a desirable state by men. Men who are young are perceived as more virile, considered as good protectors and providers by women for them and their children. 3. Gazing into a person's eyes. Did you know that gazing into a person's eyes can actually make the individual fall in love with you? That's the conclusion of numerous studies on attraction and romantic love. In one particular experiment, two opposite-sex strangers were asked to gaze into each other's eyes for 2 minutes. This study concluded that the act of simply looking into another's eyes for only a few moments was enough for them to produce passionate feelings for each other. Kellerman, Lewis, and Laird, 1989. To make use of this tactic when you have a conversation with this person, look him directly in the eyes when speaking and listening. Most of the time we sort of gaze generally at a person's face or divert our glance when in conversation. By looking into his eyes while speaking with him, you engage this psychological phenomenon without being obvious. 4. The law of contrast and association. When you want someone to find you attractive, your best bet is to meet this person initially by yourself or with you being accompanied by an attractive person of the opposite sex. This is because of the law of contrast and the law of association. We don't often judge a person by herself, but in contrast with other people. This is intensified when it comes to meeting someone for the first time. We see and think of her physical attributes in comparison to those she is with. There have been many studies in this area, including some that confirm that men who have recently been looking at bathing suit models find other women, or even their own wives, less attractive. Herein lies one of the biggest mistakes we often make. Before someone has a chance to know the real you and to be influenced by these other tactics, your physical beauty is the first thing you're judged by. So, put the odds in your favor. Do not, I repeat, do not find yourself in the company of those who are more attractive than you, of the same sex, when you want someone to become interested in you. When meeting this person, generally for the first time only, try also not to be in the company of terribly unattractive people of either sex. This is because of the law of association, where we tend to see a group as a whole and not the individuals. Therefore, again, your best approach is to be by yourself or with an attractive person of the opposite sex. This will also afford you the opportunity to use your other tactics without distraction. The reason you can be with an attractive person of the opposite sex is that the law of association takes precedence over the law of contrast when the members of the group are more different than they are similar. In other words, your attractiveness is enhanced by this person because you are seen as one unit. 5. Self-esteem and attraction. This is a tactic to use if your own beauty is limited, as it will allow you to be seen initially as much more attractive than you might otherwise appear. A study by Elaine Walster Hatfield showed that a woman who is introduced to a man will find him more appealing if her self-esteem has been temporarily injured than a woman whose self-esteem has not been impaired. Walster Hatfield, 1965. While you wouldn't want to go out of your way to make someone feel bad about herself, should you become aware that this person has recently had a rejection, you should know you would appear to be more attractive to her than if her self-esteem were in high gear. This law is what is responsible for the good old rebound effect, whereby a person finds herself fast into a relationship right after one ends, usually with someone whom she wouldn't under normal conditions date. Another way to slip in under the radar is to simply approach her when she is with other more attractive people. Studies conclude that when we're around people who we feel are better looking than we are, we tend to feel less confident about ourselves and our appearance. Again, when our own self-esteem is suffering, we tend to view others as more attractive. So when the person is feeling less than good about herself, be flirtatious and friendly. The caveat here is the law of human nature that says people want what they can't have, and they like more what they have to work for. So prevent this law from hurting you by not being too obvious. Be interested and attentive, but not overly so. This is discussed at greater length later in this section when we talk specifically about relationships and getting the upper hand. 6. Reciprocal liking. We touched on this in the previous chapter, but it is included here because this law also impacts on us at a romantic level. Studies have shown that when we find out that someone we like finds us appealing, it actually awakens romantic feelings within us. Again, not only do we like those who like us, but we're also more attracted to those people once we learn that they are attracted to us. This is because an essential aspect of passionate feelings is hope. If the other person has absolutely no interest in you, then you may find her attractive, but not develop a real and intense attraction and desire. Hope paves the way for stronger, more intense romantic feelings. And finding out that someone likes us gives us hope that a relationship is possible and will intensify our feelings toward him or her. Strategy review. Engage in an activity with this person where emotional arousal is high. The perception of youth increases attraction. Your posture and walking style influence greatly how youthful you appear. Passionate feelings for another can easily develop by simply staring into someone's eyes. Look her directly in the eyes when speaking and listening. We find others more attractive at those times when we feel less confident about ourselves. Approaching her when she feels self-conscious will make you appear more attractive. Once she already likes you, deepen the attraction by letting her know that you are attracted to her. Review the techniques in Chapter 1. Get anyone to like you every time. Then, once the relationship gets going, make sure you follow the techniques in Chapter 5. Get anyone to see you as pure gold to keep the passion strong. But before you do, don't forget, if you haven't already met, you're going to want to make the best first impression possible. So let's go to Chapter 3, How to Make a Fantastic First Impression, which gives you even more psychological techniques to round out your overall strategy. Chapter 3, How to Make a Fantastic First Impression. You never have to worry again about how you're going to come across, because when you apply these psychological secrets, you'll be able to make the very best first impression every time. Whether in personal or professional situations, these secrets will give you the winning edge over your competition. Remember that these techniques and Chapter 1, Get Anyone to Like You Every Time, work in complementary fashion. Review both in order to have all of your psychological weapons in line so you can carefully devise your strategy. The number one tactic for generating a favorable first impression is the easiest to do. Smile. Smiling accomplishes 4 powerful things. It conveys confidence, happiness, and enthusiasm, and most important, it shows acceptance. People who smile are perceived as confident, because when we are nervous or unsure about ourselves or our surroundings, we tend not to smile. Smiling, of course, conveys happiness, and we are drawn to happy people. We simply view them more favorably. Enthusiasm is essential to making a good impression because it's contagious. Your smile shows that you are pleased to be where you are and to meet this person, and he in turn becomes more interested in meeting you. Finally, smiling conveys acceptance and lets the other person know that you unconditionally accept who he or she is. Have you ever wondered why dogs are so lovable? Because they greet us with complete acceptance. If you have a tail, then wag it. If you don't, then smile. Of course, there's more to ensuring a good first impression, so let's continue. Regarding first impressions, there is something called the primacy effect, the process whereby our first impression of another person causes us to interpret his or her subsequent behavior in a manner consistent with the first impression. In English, this means that our first impression of someone is so crucial because everything we see and hear afterward gets filtered through our initial opinion. In effect, you create an image of the person right when you meet him, and you see his subsequent behaviors through this image. So, if his first impression of you is favorable, then he will tend to be kinder in his future evaluations of you. The importance of primacy is so significant that even the order of information that we receive about somebody alters our impression of him. Listen to these two lists of words. A. Cold person. Industrious, critical, practical, and determined. B. Warm person. Industrious, critical, practical, and determined. In this study by Harold Kelly, 1950, students who heard the description of an upcoming guest lecturer on List A had a harsher perception of him than those who heard from List B. As you heard, the words are identical except for the first one. Once we hear the first word, all of the other qualities are filtered through our initial perception of this person, that he is either warm or cold. Make that initial moment the very best, and the rest of your conversation will be filtered through it, thereby creating a highly favorable impression. Again, that is why smiling is so important. You can do it right away, and it says so much about you, and all positive. Another factor that can dramatically influence how we are initially perceived is that of accessibility and priming. Simply, it's been clearly demonstrated that the ease with which we can recall certain thoughts and ideas colors our perception. In a study showing just this, Higgins, Rolls, and Jones, 1977, those who had memorized the words reckless, conceited, aloof, and stubborn later formed negative impressions of a fictitious person. They viewed him as arrogant and as a person who needlessly took dangerous chances. However, people who first memorized the words adventurous, self-confident, independent, and persistent later formed positive impressions. Again, this is because these words and their corresponding ideas, what they represent, were in the front of their minds. And this colored their perception of a person whom they were introduced to for the very first time. Even though these words had nothing to do with the person, these qualities were easily accessible in the people's minds, and they hence unconsciously ascribed those traits to somebody whom they then met. So if you want to make a favorable impression on someone, it would benefit you if that person were to be recently exposed to positive words. If you're a job applicant, your resume should be peppered with positive adjectives. For example, assertive, energetic, decisive, passionate, resourceful. Instead of just saying who you are and what you are capable of, use strong, specific, and positive language to convey precisely your talents and capabilities. Then, when the interviewer meets you, shortly after reading through your resume, these traits are already primed for association with you. For another interesting application of the power of language, listen through Chapter 26, The Best Way to Break Bad News. PowerPoint. One of the biggest mistakes criminal defense attorneys make is to put their client on the stand when the details of the crime are still fresh and easily accessible in the minds of jurors. The better tactic is to put a witness or expert on the stand who uses positive and trusting language immediately prior to putting their client on the stand. In personal as well as business situations, you also want to lay the unconscious groundwork before you're introduced. Having a sales associate or your assistant tell your prospect about a recent vacation or a story that uses positive, uplifting language can be quite effective prior to your introduction. For instance, she might incorporate phrases such as, "Beautiful view of this majestic scene, felt completely at peace and such a sense of calm and security." This puts these themes directly in the mind of your prospect. Personal situations offer more of a challenge, as introducing a third party isn't always practical. One way to circumvent this is to introduce these words directly yourself in the beginning of the conversation. Even though you don't get the benefit of the primacy effect, you'll recall from Chapter 1, Get Anyone to Like You Every Time, the powerful influencing factor of association. These words will rub off onto you and will be unconsciously associated with you. PowerPoint. Who says you can't get a second chance at a first impression? If you did something incredibly inappropriate or stupid, do not try to defend your behavior. There's only one thing that will work. The phrase, "I feel so embarrassed." Why? Because this one phrase accomplishes three very important things. First, it shows that you know what you did was unacceptable, which means that you're unlikely to do it again. Second, it shows that you're human, and people actually like us more when we acknowledge something stupid and embarrassing and then take responsibility for it. Third, it shows complete honesty. And who doesn't want to deal with an honest person? Strategy review. Smile. Smiling accomplishes four powerful things. It conveys confidence, happiness, and enthusiasm, and, most important, it shows acceptance. Engage the primacy effect and make that initial moment, and the first 5 minutes or so, the very best, and the rest of your conversation will be filtered through it, thereby creating a highly favorable impression. The psychological phenomenon of accessibility and priming can dramatically influence how we are initially perceived. Lay the unconscious groundwork prior to your meeting. Chapter 4. Get the instant advantage in every relationship. The 4 biggest mistakes and how to avoid them. You hate playing games, I know. But you're playing them anyway, so you might as well win. Whether it's business or personal, the rules are the same to gain the upper hand in any relationship. When dating, have you wondered why it seems it's the ones that you don't really like whom you can't seem to get rid of, and the ones you do like who never seem to stick around? The reason is simple. It's not the person, but the way you behave toward him or her. What determines interest in another human being is a fascinating thing. Most people are actually on the fence at the start of most relationships. This means that almost every time someone can be swayed toward either liking or disliking you. And he has moved in either direction, either closer or farther, depending on how you relate to him. This is because as human beings, we are forever guided and governed by human nature. The bottom line is that it's not the person you're dating, it's the things you are doing that determine his or her level of interest. Otherwise, it would be a startling coincidence, if not a statistical improbability, that everyone you liked just happened to not want a commitment, and everyone you weren't that interested in wanted to marry you. So if it's not you, defined as your looks, personality, background, and so on, it must be your behavior toward this person that determines the direction and, ultimately, the outcome of the relationship. This very powerful yet simple psychological strategy can be summed up in one sentence. You need to behave with the person you don't like the way you've been behaving with the person you do like, and vice versa. While there are many little aspects of one's behavior, there are 4 main factors, which will now be discussed. Availability. People want what they can't have. By constantly making yourself available, you're actually diminishing your value. This is not a trick or a game to play, but a function of human behavior. Attraction is not a fixed value. This means that what someone thinks about you is determined to a large extent by what you do, not by just who you are or what you look like. The law of scarcity is prevalent and relevant in every area of our lives, especially here. That which is plentiful is often underappreciated, and that which is rare is held in high regard and considered valuable. When you are dating someone whom you are not that interested in, you tend to make yourself available when it's convenient for you. And when you're dating someone who you really like, you're consistently available. Do the reverse. This means when you're dating someone you don't like too much, if you're not baking cookies for him, calling him twice a day, asking where the relationship is going, and so on, then don't do it with the person you like. And by the way, when you do this with the ones you don't like, they'll be scared off soon enough, so you've eliminated this problem as well. But wait. In Chapter 1, Get Anyone to Like You Every Time, we said that if you want someone to like you, you want to make yourself available, because this increases liking. If this is so, doesn't it contradict the law of scarcity? Here's what is often misunderstood. If you want someone to like you, then you do indeed want to be in their company fairly often. This is true, but remember that liking is the foundation for every relationship. That means that once you move past the liking stage, meaning the person is already fond of you, and the relationship unfolds into something more serious, you then want to limit your availability.
That would be weird.
PowerPoint. Here's a question. Don't we often see good-looking people with attractive partners and vice versa? If attraction has little to do with appearance, then why is this so? It's because we are often most comfortable with those of similar levels of attractiveness. This coincides with studies that show that people are generally friends with those of similar levels of attractiveness. A good-looking person can sometimes make a less attractive person feel uncomfortable. So this less attractive person tends to lose perspective and act differently, meaning that she puts the person on a pedestal and does the 4 things outlined in this chapter that she shouldn't be doing. But it's the things that she's doing, not her, the physical person, that makes the difference. This is validated by the fact that sometimes attractive people are with less attractive people. In these relationships, it's likely that the less attractive person feels confident about the relationship and hence behaves differently than their less attractive counterparts. This confidence is replicated here when we apply the 4 factors to gaining leverage in the relationship. Perspective. In your relationships, you need perspective. In life, when we derive pleasure from only one source, we tend to overemphasize its value and importance. You should find meaning in your life outside of the relationship, so this person doesn't become your whole world. It's important to feel fulfilled in other areas of your life, so you're able to maintain a sensible perspective and not rely on someone else's affection as your sole source of satisfaction and happiness. When you're dating someone you're not too interested in, you have plenty of perspective because you're not thinking, this is the only person for me. If I don't have him, my world is over. You're thinking, all right, let's see what happens. Maybe he'll grow on me and maybe he won't. And it's precisely that mentality that translates into the best attitude. And it's this attitude and your corresponding behavior that actually make you more attractive. Passion. Here's the crux of how and why relationships work or fail. Simply, you can't appreciate what you take for granted. This is essentially why people, in general, become unhappy in their own lives. They always want more, but are never grateful for what they have. And if you are not grateful for what you have, you will begin to take it for granted. And when you do this, you no longer appreciate it. And when you don't appreciate something, it holds no enjoyment for you. The same holds true for relationships. If someone takes you for granted, he or she will not appreciate you and will begin to look for someone else. Similarly, if you went to the doctor and were told that you might lose your hearing, you would probably develop a renewed appreciation for sound. Our gratitude lies in being reminded that we should not take these things for granted. And you don't take for granted what you believe can be taken away from you at any time. Similarly, if the object of your affections is a bit insecure with the relationship, meaning there is an element of doubt, then his or her lack of confidence will not lead to arrogance and ingratitude. You must create an element of uncertainty, or you will lose the passion that drives the relationship. PowerPoint. Since it's possible for someone to be taken away from us at any time, by accident, by illness, why do you have to create more doubt? If you're in love, you don't. This is for those who are not yet at that stage, for whom we artificially and temporarily create the same atmosphere of uncertainty. Again, without some doubt, there is the feeling that you will always be there. Then he no longer sees how great you are and loses appreciation for you. He begins to take you for granted, and the passion dies. But you, in your relationship, can within a second reignite the passion and turn the relationship around by introducing an element of doubt. Passion is extinguished when there is no doubt, because when there's no doubt, you will be taken for granted. Just as in the previous example of going to the doctor, you never gave your hearing a second thought until you thought that it might not be there. When doubt is introduced into the equation, it changes your perspective. I cannot stress this enough. You will be taken for granted and not appreciated, and the passion will go out of the relationship if all elements of doubt are removed. Unfortunately, when we are insecure about a relationship, we harm it further by being clingier because we need reassurance. But in doing so, you reinforce that you are forever his and remove in his mind any doubt that you might not always be there. And then passion is extinguished. It is a fact of human nature. But now that you understand, you can use it to your advantage. Remember that this and the other factors in this chapter are not ideas or tricks that work sometimes. These are laws that dictate human behavior. If you use them and operate within these parameters, you can succeed at gaining complete leverage in any relationship. But finally, make sure that you don't make the mistake that most do when it comes to how you make them feel. PowerPoint. Why can't I have an open, honest, and trusting relationship? You can, of course, but you have to wait until you are in love with each other. And here's why. The previous 3 tactics are ego-based and are designed to get you to this point, but should be discontinued so that you can move on to a mature and lasting relationship. Briefly, love is the absence of ego or the I. And once love takes root, the dynamics of the relationship change so that the more the person is available and the more he does for you, the more you love him. As far as passion goes, you need only introduce some uncertainty should you feel that you are being taken for granted. How you make them feel. A person likes you based on how you make her feel about herself. This doesn't contradict the previous PowerPoint. You should still maintain that behavior regarding your attitude and availability, but you do want to treat the person well. It is bad advice, though often given, that you don't want to build up someone's confidence and be overly flattering and complimentary, because then she will know that you like her and back off. To a degree, we know this can be true because when someone likes us, while we are flattered, we can find ourselves less interested in that person. This reaction comes courtesy of the rule that says, we want what we can't have and want more of that which we have to work for. Simply, if it falls in our laps, we tend to have less appreciation for it. But herein lies the crucial difference between being attentive and kind versus telling her that she is your entire world and the only person for you. Because, as we talked about, this removes doubt and begins to erode the passion. The former is more objective and has to do primarily with her. The latter involves your relationship and invokes the rule of scarcity. Notice the crucial difference between saying how much you like this person, which makes you lose leverage, and telling her that she is a likable and great person. Merely stating that somebody is terrific makes her feel great and makes you look great. It's a winning combination because it's only the confident person who tells another how wonderful and terrific she is. And we like confident and secure people. The distinction is often blurred, and we end up trying to play it cool and not wanting to show our hand. This accomplishes little and creates a cold and uncomfortable atmosphere. But lavishing this person with objective praise shows you in the best and most confident light and makes her feel great. Again, you want to let her know that you think she's great, but not that she is your whole world and that you can't live without her. The fastest way to lose leverage and to lose someone that you like is to do the opposite of the preceding strategy. That means making yourself completely available, having no perspective, removing all doubt, and being uncomplimentary. Do this, and you can be sure that you'll be back dating someone whom you don't like very much. And he'll stick around because you'll do all the right things. Strategy review. People want what they can't have, and they want more of what they have to work for. If you are easy to come, then you may be easy to let go. If you have an unbalanced life, you will have a distorted view of the relationship. Balance gives you perspective, and perspective allows you to make better decisions in the relationship. When all doubt is removed, the person will take you for granted. Introduce an element of uncertainty to instantly reignite the passion. A person likes you based, in part, on how you make her feel about herself. Make her feel good, and she will feel good about you. Listen through the tactics in the following chapter to round out your overall strategy. Chapter 5. Get anyone to see you as pure gold. Number 1 rule of selling yourself in every area of life. Here is one of the greatest truths in life. If you don't place a value on yourself, somebody else will. How do you get the best deal, the finest advantage, or the greatest edge in anything? Here's how. Ask for the moon and settle for the stars. In the previous chapter, we talked about gaining leverage in relationships. But when you're in a relationship of any sort, you want to invoke the power of this law to give you the ultimate edge. Almost everything in life is subjective. This means that there is no absolute truth, and opinions tend to become facts in most new situations. All other information is then filtered through this new belief structure. If you want to give yourself, or anything for that matter, instant worth, you need to create the right image. In negotiations, start off very high, even if it's a little unreasonable. This is important because you will have set the tone. Bear in mind, you also don't want to be ridiculously high because you want to be taken seriously. Whenever you are dealing with someone or something of unknown value, the first one who places a value on it establishes its worth. To be clear, when we speak of the value of a person, we mean the perceived value to others, not, of course, the individual's value as a human being. Therefore, value is an unknown quantity whose perception can be altered with the application of 2 specific psychological principles. Whenever you're dealing with an intangible, establish its worth where you want it, and as long as there is no established value, you will not be seen as unreasonable. Let's say you're an amateur photographer. You take pictures as a hobby, and someone wants to hire you as a freelancer. How much do you charge? Well, some photographers charge as much as $10,000 a day. Are you in their league? Probably not. But if you charge $100 a day, clearly you will not be perceived as one of the best. Will you be laughed at if you say your fee is $3,000 for the day? Not likely. Even if you think they can't afford to pay you that much, you're now negotiating from a very high starting point, one that you've established. In the end, you can charge them much less and they will be elated because they are not getting a $500 a day photographer. No, they're getting a $3,000 a day photographer for a mere $500. Let's take a look at how this law affects us in our daily life. Let's say that you're shopping and you notice a jacket that you think is reasonably priced at $69. You think, okay, not too bad. Then you realize it's $690. Suddenly, your opinion of the jacket changes dramatically. You begin to realize that what you thought was fair quality is really exquisite tailoring, and you notice every little detail and can now see how it could be so expensive. At $690, you might not buy it, but if it went on sale the next week for $129, you just might snatch it up. Why? Because of its perceived value. Now, there is one other factor other than price that helps to establish value. The other criterion that determines worth is how available something is. Simply, the scarcer something is, the greater the value people place on it. Gold, oil, and diamonds are much more valuable than water and air because they are not as plentiful. Even though water and air are indispensable to our survival, it's gold and precious jewels that we value. Until, of course, you're without water for a day. Then its scarcity makes it more valuable than a king's ransom. So how do you establish your worth in personal relationships? You can make yourself more valuable by not being so available. Sex? Give it freely initially, and little value is placed on it, and on you. This is as true for men as it is for women. At work, your time? If you're sitting by the water cooler all day, how do you think you'll be perceived by your boss and coworkers? Will you be judged as valuable or a dime a dozen? Strategy review. Price and availability are the most dominant psychological factors that determine the value of just about anything or any person. Manipulating these two factors will dramatically increase or decrease how valuable and worthy we think someone or something is. Chapter 6. How to appear calm, confident, and in control in any situation. These techniques are included in this section because, as we talked about in the previous chapters, confidence and likability go together. We are attracted to, admire, and tend to like those whom we see as in control and secure in themselves. There is nothing less attractive than a person who has a low opinion of himself. And while this chapter won't give you self-esteem, the techniques can make you appear and actually feel more calm and confident. This will allow you to get into an optimum state in any situation or conversation. The first influence to consider is the physiological aspect of anxiety. When we're nervous about giving a speech or meeting someone, for example, most of us don't eat or eat the wrong things. Anytime we eat foods high in sugar or refined carbohydrates, our bodies produce adrenaline in an attempt to regulate our blood sugar levels. This is because these foods lower our blood sugar levels and the body produces adrenaline to compensate for the fluctuation. Adrenaline, which is the primary factor in the fight or flight response, is what causes you to become anxious and nervous. This is why people who eat a diet high in sugars and refined carbohydrates often seem nervous and high-strung. This is a psychological disorder that manifested from a poor diet. PowerPoint. Recent studies show that those who suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, panic attacks, and anxiety attacks may find relief in a low-carbohydrate diet. By keeping blood sugar levels steady, anxiety-based symptoms can be greatly alleviated. Have you ever noticed that after a large meal you feel fairly relaxed and calm? This is because your blood sugar level is stable and the body is not producing high levels of adrenaline to compensate for fluctuations. The ideal, though, is to eat small, non-refined meals. This will keep your blood sugar levels steady and your mind calm. You won't feel too sluggish to think clearly. There are countless nutritional books that do a much better job on this subject than we can in this short space. Any health food store with a book section can give you full and complete information on non-refined foods. Another fascinating aspect to consider is that the very things you do to appear calm and relaxed can actually make you feel more calm and relaxed. So by engaging in certain behaviors and avoiding others, you can maintain a sense of calm and inner balance. By changing your physiology, you can actually change your brain chemistry. For example, studies show that when we smile, we actually put ourselves into a better mood. It has long been thought that we smile when we feel happy, which is, of course, true. There is strong evidence, however, that the act itself can transform your emotional state and make you feel happier. Conversely, if you were to frown for a minute or so, you would probably feel worse. While our mood reflects our physical state, so too does our physical self bring about a change in our mood. The most important dominant factors that affect mood and our emotional state are smile. This is a universal sign that you are comfortable. And again, according to several studies, the very act of smiling calms you down and actually makes you feel more relaxed. Breathe. When we're nervous, we tend to hold our breath. Breathe deeply and regularly. This will calm you down instantly and make it easier for you to think, react, and speak clearly and confidently. PowerPoint. Want to tell if anyone is nervous about anything? Look for these two signs. If they're not smiling and breathing regularly and deeply, then they're not as calm as they would like you to believe. You can tell if a person is not breathing regularly because you'll notice every so often he takes a very deep breath to get oxygen in very quickly. Research into this area also shows us something else remarkable. That is, our emotions are not just in our mind, but actually in every cell, in every organ, and in every muscle of our body. If you want to ensure long-term emotional balance and calm, try yoga or some type of stretching routine. Our muscles retain our emotions. Haven't you ever wondered why you feel so good after you stretch out your body? The psychological tensions are released, along with the physical stresses. The central nervous system is made up of our brain and spinal cord. It is impossible to completely relax the mind unless you relax the spinal cord as well. Yoga helps to achieve this. Notice how high-strung and nervous people carry themselves. Their bodies are often tense and stiff. Working out the tensions in the physical body begins the process of releasing emotional stresses. In addition to smiling and deep breathing, try this for short-term and long-term success toward releasing negative emotions and relaxing yourself within minutes every time. Strategy review. Don't overlook the powerful physiological influence of blood sugar levels. Avoid engaging the fight or flight response by avoiding sugars and refined carbohydrates. Smile. Research shows that the very act of smiling actually makes you feel more relaxed and calm. Breathe deeply. When we're nervous, we tend to hold our breath. Deep breathing instantly relaxes the central nervous system and literally calms your nerves. For long-term stress reduction, practice yoga. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cord. It is impossible to feel completely relaxed mentally unless your body is at ease. Section 2. Never be fooled, tricked, manipulated, used, lied to, or taken advantage of again. Are you tired of looking foolish and being taken advantage of? Let's face it, there are people in this world who are willing to say and do anything to get their way. Whether it's the car salesman, your date, a coworker, or your boss, knowing if they are out for their best interests or yours is invaluable. With these psychological tactics, you will be able to tell within minutes what somebody is really up to. If you're tired of getting the short end of the stick, use these techniques and never feel powerless again. Chapter 7. The 6-star test to see if someone is a true friend. Does she really care about you? Is he loyal? Is he just pretending to like you? Sometimes it can be hard to sift out those who pretend to be our friends from real, true friends. But you don't have to waste time in dead-end or selfish relationships anymore. With these psychological secrets, you'll never have to worry whether he's got your best interests at heart or his own. You'll know for sure every time. This might be a good place to remind you that friendship is the foundation for any relationship. If you are with someone who fails this test, the relationship may not be a very sound one. The 6-star test to see if she's a true friend. Interest. One important criterion that defines a friend is how interested the person is in your life. Tell her about something significant that is going on in your life and see if she calls to follow up and find out what happened. If she doesn't, then call her and see if she mentions it. Finally, if she doesn't bring it up, hint about it and see if she even remembers the conversation you had about it previously. Loyalty. Tell a secret about a mutual friend and see if it gets back to him or her. True friends know the value of trust in a relationship. Just make sure that you get the permission of your friend to tell her secret to this other person. Pride. Anyone can tell you to cheer up. It makes them feel good. But see who pats you on the back for a good job. Those who are not driven by jealousy and envy will do just that. Your true friends are proud of your accomplishments, not jealous of your successes. See if a friend comes to you when you get good news, not just bad news. There are lots of people who are willing to cheer us up when things aren't going well. But it's more difficult to find someone who will congratulate us when things are going well. Honesty. A true friend is someone who tells you the things that you don't want to hear. She is willing to have you be upset with her if it will help you. Does she tell you things that are for your benefit, even though she knows that it might make you upset with her? Respect. Tell her that there is something exciting, something that is good going on in your life, but you absolutely prefer not to talk about it right now, and see if she presses you on it. There is a difference between curiosity and concern. If she must know, then she's just interested in the gossip and not in you. A good friend will respect your wishes and give you your space, for now. She may bring it up from time to time because she's interested, but she won't constantly and immediately press you on it if you make it clear that you choose not to discuss it now. The reason you use a positive instead of a negative mystery is because if a good friend feels that something is wrong or that you are not well, she will insist on knowing now because she is concerned. You don't want to test her this way, however, because you wouldn't want to put your friend through this. Sacrifice. Is she willing to give up something if it means making you happy? Will she sacrifice her own pleasure for your happiness? Who decides what you do? Is the word compromise in her vocabulary? And when the chips are down and it's you against them, most people scramble to protect their own interests. Notice if she is the one who has ideas or a plan to help both of you to escape unscathed, or whether she just looks to save herself and protect her own interests. Strategy review. If she passes 4 or more of the 6 tests, you've probably got a good friend whom you can count on. If she scores 3 or less, you might want to review your friendship or speak to her about it. Of course, when we have a lot going on in our own lives, we can become inadvertently distracted and unintentionally insensitive. So it's best to gauge the relationship using these 6 factors over a period of time and not just in a 24-hour period. Chapter 8. Does his story check out? How to spot a false alibi by asking a single question. Have you ever wanted to hook somebody up to a lie detector test to see if he was telling you the truth? Well, now with this technique, you can instantly find out if his story checks out or if his alibi is nothing but a pack of lies. The technique used here is called conundrum. It works by introducing a piece of evidence and watching how your suspect handles it. You'll see that you can tell if anyone is lying by asking one question, and you can use this technique in any situation when you want to check on someone's alibi. Let's say a woman suspected that her husband was not at the movies with his friends, as he said, but out with his secretary for a late-night rendezvous. Simply asking him if he really did go to the movies would only prompt him to answer yes. This is because if he was there, he would say yes, and if he wasn't there, he would likely stick to his story and say yes. And she wouldn't know whether or not to believe him. With this psychological technique, she introduces a made-up fact and then sees how he handles it. For instance, she might say, "Oh, I heard that the traffic was all backed up because of a car accident right outside the theater." Now all she has to do is sit back and watch how he responds. This is because her husband is faced with an obvious conundrum. If he wasn't at the movies, He doesn't know whether to acknowledge that there was an accident because there might not have been one. And if he says that there wasn't much traffic and there was, then she'll also know he wasn't really at the movies. But regardless of his answer, he will do the one thing that every liar does when confronted with conundrum. He will hesitate, deciding how to answer. Remember, had he been at the theater, he would have instantly said, "Oh, there was no traffic. What are you talking about?" But the liar isn't sure because he wasn't there, and so he will hesitate in his answer, and in doing so, give himself away. On top of that, he will likely answer wrongly by agreeing to what you say, because he doesn't know that you're making up the accident. PowerPoint. It's all in the details. The more detailed he is, the more you can believe in what he's saying. Made-up stories often have huge gaps and are vague and abstract. How specific is his story? Strategy review. To use conundrum, simply introduce a piece of evidence and see how he handles it. Just make sure that he would have direct knowledge of what you're talking about if, in fact, his story is true. Make sure that this evidence is something that's plausible but not true. Then sit back and see whether he's fast with the correct response. If he hesitates, changes the subject, and/or gives the wrong answer to your question, then you're not getting the truth. Chapter 9. How to tell if someone is trying to manipulate you. The 7 deadly tricks to watch out for. From the bedroom to the boardroom, learn how to see clearly and easily evaluate information without being swayed by those with selfish interests and unkind intentions. The manipulator's bag of tricks is stocked with 7 deadly tactics that can have you jumping through hoops. The good news is that by knowing what they are, you can watch out for them and never be manipulated again. These powerful manipulators are guilt, intimidation, appeal to ego, fear, curiosity, our desire to be liked, and love. Anyone who uses any of these is attempting to move you from logic to emotion to a playing field that's not so level. He knows that he can't win on the facts, so he will try to manipulate your emotions with any one or a combination of the tactics following. Guilt. How can you even say that? I'm hurt that you wouldn't trust me. I just don't know who you are anymore. Intimidation. What's the matter? Can't you make a decision? Don't you have enough confidence in yourself to do this? Appeal to ego. I can see that you're a smart person. I wouldn't try to put anything past you. How could I? You'd be on to me in a second. Fear. You know, you might just lose this whole thing. I sure hope you know what you're doing. I'm telling you that you won't get a better deal anywhere else. This is your last shot at making... Well, now with this technique, you can instantly find out if his story checks out or if his alibi is nothing but a pack of lies. The technique used here is called conundrum. It works by introducing a piece of evidence and watching how your suspect handles it. You'll see that you can tell if anyone is lying by asking one question, and you can use this technique in any situation when you want to check on someone's alibi. Let's say a woman suspected that her husband was not at the movies with his friends, as he said, but out with his secretary for a late-night rendezvous. Simply asking him if he really did go to the movies would only prompt him to answer yes. This is because if he was there, he would say yes, and if he wasn't there, he would likely stick to his story and say yes. And she wouldn't know whether or not to believe him. With this psychological technique, she introduces a made-up fact and then sees how he handles it. For instance, she might say, "Oh, I heard that the traffic was all backed up because of a car accident right outside the theater." Now all she has to do is sit back and watch how he responds. This is because her husband is faced with an obvious conundrum. If he wasn't at the movies, he doesn't know whether to acknowledge that there was an accident because there might not have been one. And if he says that there wasn't much traffic and there was, then she'll also know he wasn't really at the movies. But regardless of his answer, he will do the one thing that every liar does when confronted with conundrum. he will hesitate, deciding how to answer. Remember, had he been at the theater, he would have instantly said, "Well, there was no traffic. What are you talking about?" But the liar isn't sure because he wasn't there, and so he will hesitate in his answer, and in doing so, give himself away. On top of that, he will likely answer wrongly by agreeing to what you say, because he doesn't know that you're making up the accident. PowerPoint. It's all in the details. The more detailed he is, the more you can believe in what he's saying. Made-up stories often have huge gaps and are vague and abstract. How specific is his story? Strategy review. To use conundrum, simply introduce a piece of evidence and see how he handles it. Just make sure that he would have direct knowledge of what you're talking about if, in fact, his story is true. Make sure that this evidence is something that's plausible but not true. Then sit back and see whether he's fast with the correct response. If he hesitates, changes the subject, and/or gives the wrong answer to your question, then you're not getting the truth. Chapter 9. How to tell if someone is trying to manipulate you. The 7 deadly tricks to watch out for. From the bedroom to the boardroom, learn how to see clearly and easily evaluate information without being swayed by those with selfish interests and unkind intentions. The manipulator's bag of tricks is stocked with 7 deadly tactics that can have you jumping through hoops. The good news is that by knowing what they are, you can watch out for them and never be manipulated again. These powerful manipulators are guilt, intimidation, appeal to ego, fear, curiosity, our desire to be liked, and love. Anyone who uses any of these is attempting to move you from logic to emotion to a playing field that's not so level. He knows that he can't win on the facts, so he will try to manipulate your emotions with any one or a combination of the tactics following. Guilt. How can you even say that? I'm hurt that you wouldn't trust me. I just don't know who you are anymore. Intimidation. What's the matter? Can't you make a decision? Don't you have enough confidence in yourself to do this? Appeal to ego. I can see that you're a smart person. I wouldn't try to put anything past you. How could I? You'd be on to me in a second. Fear. You know, you might just lose this whole thing. I sure hope you know what you're doing. I'm telling you that you won't get a better deal anywhere else. This is your last shot at making things work out. Why do you want to risk losing out on being happy? Curiosity. Look, you only live once. Try it. You can always go back to how things were before. It might be fun, exciting, a real adventure. You'll never know unless you try, and you may regret never even seeing what happens. Our desire to be liked. I thought you were a real player. So did everybody else. This is going to be a real disappointment if you don't come through for us. Come on. Nobody likes it when a person backs out. This can be your chance to prove what you're made of. Love. If you loved me, you wouldn't question me. Of course I have only your best interests at heart. I wouldn't lie to you. You know that deep down inside, don't you? We can have a wonderful relationship if only you'd let yourself go and experience the wonders that the future will deliver to us. Strategy review. Look and listen objectively, not only to the words, but also to the message. These abusive maneuvers interfere with your ability to digest the facts. When these emotions creep into your thinking, temporarily suspend your feelings and look at the messenger as well as the message. If you hear anything that sounds like these manipulators, stop and reevaluate the situation. Don't act quickly and emotionally. Wait and objectively gather the facts so you don't become a hand puppet for the malevolent. Chapter 10. How to tell if a person's bluffing in any situation. How would you like to know if the guy sitting across the poker table from you really has a full house or just a pair of deuces? Or if your top executive is serious about quitting if he doesn't get a raise? There is a way to tell just about any time in any situation if someone is bluffing, because no matter what the situation, all bluffs have one thing in common. To understand how this works, let's define what a bluff really is. A bluff occurs when a person is really against something but pretends to be for it, or when he is for something and pretends to be against it. Consequently, when a person bluffs, he usually tries to appear as if he doesn't care when he really does, and he pretends to be concerned when he really isn't. In any case, he is trying to create a false impression intended to disguise his true belief. Therein lies the key. People who bluff generally overcompensate in either direction, and if you look for it, it's glaringly obvious. You can uncover a bluff instantly by noticing how someone tries to appear. A card player bets heavily and raises the pot. Does he have the cards or just guts? When bluffing, in this case in a poker hand, he wants to show that he's not timid, so he puts in his money fast. But if he did have a good hand, what might he do? That's right. Deliberate a bit, putting it in slowly to show that he really isn't sure about his hand. When people bluff at anything, in poker or in the real world, they manipulate how confident they appear. This means that they try to create the opposite impression of how they truly feel. Again, while bluffing and in trying to appear confident, he bets quickly, and when he has a good hand, he will actually wait a moment or two to pretend that he's thinking about what to do. This goes for all situations. If he reacts too quickly and assuredly, then he is trying to show that he is confident, when in many cases, he really isn't. Let's take another example. A partner in a law firm says he's going to leave unless he is allowed to take on a certain case. Is it a hollow threat or the real McCoy? If it was genuine, he would likely not make a point of trying to convey his confidence. However, an air of overconfidence will be easily observed if he is bluffing. This is, of course, because we have to assume that if he's at the firm, then he wants to be there, and that he will only be forced to leave if he doesn't get what he's asking for. So, logic dictates that he would rather stay and get the case than not get it and leave. Therefore, if he appears overly committed to the idea of leaving if he doesn't get the case, then he's bluffing, because we know that he really doesn't want to leave, but is trying to create that impression. If he is sincere in his stance that he will leave if he doesn't get his way, then he will appear almost reluctant and not overly confident in his stance because he's not pleased that it has come down to this. He is more solemn because he knows that he will have to leave if it comes down to it. But if he was bluffing, it won't come down to anything because he's not leaving. The attitudes of both are completely different and make it clear whether it's a bluff or the real thing. To understand the psychology behind this, we need only look at how people handle themselves in general. A person who has high self-esteem and confidence in himself is not the one going around showing the world how great he is. It's the insecure person who puts on airs of confidence, almost arrogance, to compensate for how he really feels about himself. He is, in fact, trying to convey a false self. And as we've just illustrated, this is identical and true for specific situations as well. In a negotiation, the person who keeps saying things such as, "I'm going to walk, you have to do right by me, I'm not settling on this one, you're going to lose me," is not going anywhere. He's bluffing. Confidence in one's position usually speaks for itself, just as a person's confidence in himself speaks for itself. It's the insecure who has to tell you how confident he is, because that's the only way that we're going to find out. If, however, you hear something similar to the following phrases in a negotiation, they likely reflect a person who is sincere and who is not bluffing. I'm sorry that you feel that way. No hard feelings? I don't think so, but let me give it some thought. Remember that the confident person, the one who is not bluffing, isn't interested in how he's coming across. He's unconcerned with his image, unlike his bluffing counterpart, who is consumed by others' perceptions of him. Strategy review. Uncover a bluff instantly by noticing how the person tries to appear. A person who is bluffing will always overcompensate to create the illusion that he is 100% behind his convictions. Chapter 11. How to see through people. In 2 minutes, get anyone to reveal what they're really up to. If you're tired of being deceived and taken advantage of, this psychological technique will allow you to actually look into a person's mind to find out if he's hiding anything. The tactic, which I first introduced in my book, Never Be Lied to Again, virtually guarantees that you can find out if he's got something to hide within minutes. It's called similar scenario, and it works like a Rorschach test, or what is commonly referred to as an ink blot test. The Rorschach test consists of abstract bilaterally symmetrical ink blots. The theory behind the test is that a person's interpretation of the shapes will reveal his or her unconscious attitudes and thoughts. With similar scenario, we use the same theory, but employ it in an entirely new way, verbally. What you want to do is to ask a question that does not accuse the person of anything, but rather alludes to it. Then, by simply gauging his response, you'll be able to find out if he's got something to hide. For instance, let's say that a woman suspects her husband of having an affair with his secretary. Casually, maybe over dinner, she would say, "Gee, you know what, honey? My boss, Jim, I think he may be having an affair with his secretary." Now, she simply observes his reaction. If he asks questions and becomes interested in the conversation, she can be reasonably sure that he's not doing the same thing. But if he becomes very uncomfortable and looks to change the subject, then it's likely he's engaged in a similar behavior. And she will notice this immediate shift in his demeanor and attitude. PowerPoint. Typically, when faced with this situation, we confront the person, which of course puts him on the defensive. If it turns out that we're wrong, there's a good chance that we may appear as paranoid or jealous, and the relationship may suffer. With this technique, we're able to bring up a particular subject and find out if he's comfortable or concerned with the topic, and all without making a single accusation. Let's look at another example. You think one of your salespeople is stealing office supplies. Asking outright, "Have you been stealing from the company?" is going to put her on the defensive immediately, making it nearly impossible to get to the truth. If she isn't guilty, she'll tell you that she hasn't been stealing. And if she is, she'll likely lie and say she isn't. So instead, you simply say, "Jill, I'm wondering if you could help me with something. It's come to my attention that someone in the sales department has been taking home office supplies for personal use. Any idea on how we can put a stop to this?" Again, if she's innocent of the charges, she's likely to offer her advice and be pleased that you sought out her opinion. But if she's guilty, you'll notice her becoming very uncomfortable, and she will probably assure you that she would never do anything like that. There's no reason for her to bring herself into the picture unless, of course, she's the one who feels guilty. Do you see how effective this technique is? Let's take one more example where a hospital administrator suspects that a doctor is drinking while on duty. She might say, "Dr. Marcus, I'd like to get your advice on something. A colleague of mine at another hospital has a problem with one of her doctors. She feels that he may be drinking while on call. Do you have any suggestions on how she can best approach this doctor?" Again, if he's guilty of the same behavior, he'll become very uncomfortable. If he's not drinking on duty, then he will be pleased that you sought his advice and willingly and happily offer it. So whenever you're wondering what somebody's up to, use a similar scenario and find out for sure. Strategy review. Give him the instant psychological test. Ask a question that does not accuse the person of anything, but rather alludes to it. Then simply gauge his response, and you'll learn right away if he's hiding anything. Chapter 12. Get anyone to say what he's really thinking. Ever wish you could peer into someone's mind to find out what he really thinks about you, your idea, your project, or your date? Now you can, with the ultimate mind-reading technique that actually uses a combination of several psychological principles. When you think someone isn't telling you the truth, this surefire technique is an excellent method for revealing a person's true feelings in any situation. Getting a truthful opinion from someone can be hard because you can't outright call him a liar, arguing that he doesn't really believe what he is saying. For this technique to work, you just have to get the person to commit to liking the idea, person, etc. If he doesn't like it, then you don't have to worry about trying to get the truth because you're already getting it. Once she says that she likes it, don't argue or press her on it. This is exactly where most people mess up. They'll say something like, "Are you sure you like it? Do you really?" The other person is not now going to say, "Well, now that I think of it." She's going to become more absolute in her approval, and you may not be getting to what she really thinks. With this technique, you'll see that the words you use in your response indicate that you agree and that there is room for improvement. She feels comfortable offering criticism because she feels that you expect her to do so. The two main psychological tactics at work here are consistency. Human beings have a need for continuity with their thinking, and expectancy. People often do what is expected of them. Both of these concepts are covered more extensively in other sections throughout this book. Example 1. You're not sure if your coworker really likes your idea for a new marketing campaign, even though she says that she does. Question. Do you like the concept for my new idea? Answer. Sure, it's very original. Question. Well, what would it take for you to love the idea? Example 2. You want to know if your son is looking forward to going to camp this summer. Question. Are you excited about camp next month? Answer. Yeah, it'll be fun. Question. What would it take for you to be really excited about going? Example 3. Question. Do you like my new deck? Answer. Sure, it looks fine. Question. How do you think I can make it even better? As you can hear, all these people feel comfortable answering honestly because your questions to them make it obvious that you know that everything's not perfect. By not pressing the point of their liking it, their answer naturally unfolds as an extension of what they've already said, and the truth, what they're really thinking, merely pops out. PowerPoint. Are you trying to find out what she thinks, but she doesn't want to speak ill of someone else or his work? No problem. Instead of saying, "What didn't you like about it?" or "How did she screw up?" ask instead, "How would you have done it?" or "What would you have done differently?" This phrasing takes the focus off what the other person did wrong and instead asks what this person would have done to make it better. But as you see, you get the identical information. Strategy review. Just get her to commit to liking the idea, person, or object. Then, simply ask her how she thinks that it can be improved upon. Section 3. Take control of any situation and get anyone to do anything. Succeeding in life is usually a matter of influencing the attitudes, beliefs, and thoughts of other people. This is not success through manipulation, but rather success through the application of specific psychological strategies. There's a big difference. This book operates under the premise that most people are good, decent, and honest. Of course, there are people who are not so great, and this book will protect you from them as well, so you won't be manipulated and taken advantage of. But as you know from your own life, often our fears and hang-ups get in the way of our doing what's right for ourselves and for others. Most people want to help. It makes them feel good to do for others. So rather than force people to bend to your will, this section shows you how to naturally bring out the pure and good desire and intentions of others to help you and to work with you. You can easily direct the behavior and thoughts of other people by your words and your actions. By changing the things that you do and say to others, you'll change their attitudes and behavior toward you. It's really that simple. People do not operate in a vacuum, but instead they think and behave in response to their world. Change their world, and you change their responses. Depending on the situation, you can use whichever strategies best apply. If you simply want someone to help you with something, then go to Chapter 17, Get Anyone to Do a Favor for You. If, however, you need to first change a person's mind about something, then you should go to Chapter 16, How to Get a Stubborn Person to Change His Mind About Anything. These tactics are designed to work alone and as part of an overall strategy that uses tactics from the various chapters and sections. Chapter 13. Get anyone to take immediate action in any situation. You are about to hear that by following a simple formula that uses 6 different psychological tactics, you can motivate anyone to take action anytime. This powerful strategy about to be outlined virtually guarantees cooperation from anyone in just about any situation. 1. Limit options. The first thing you want to do is narrow someone's options before you present them to him. Conventional wisdom suggests that with more options, he is sure to find something that he likes and that this will motivate him to take action. The opposite is true. If what you want him to do has numerous alternatives, he will be less likely to choose any of them. Nobody enjoys being wrong, and we don't like to second-guess ourselves. Fewer choices mean that he will make a decision faster and be less likely to dwell on it afterward. There is a well-known furniture chain that holds on to every customer order for 72 hours before putting it through to the home office. Why? Because it found that over 60% of people within 3 days of a major purchase will come back to change their mind about the color, a fabric, or the design. With too many choices, most people freeze and take forever to decide, and once they do make a decision, their brain often churns with, "Did I make the right choice?" Unless you're in a retail situation where competition mandates selection, offer no more than 3 options, with 2 being ideal. No choices can lead to a person's feeling his freedom is restricted and cause him to back off. Any option, even one, gives him a sense of empowerment, and you want him to believe that he's in control. 2. Give a deadline. Giving a deadline for action fulfills 3 separate and very important psychological motivations for fostering action. A task will expand or contract depending upon how much time you allow for it. The world operates on deadlines and expiration dates because if there is no immediate need to move forward, most people will not. It is human nature to wait until conditions become more favorable, or until we have more information, or until we are in a better mood before taking an action. It's important to give a clear-cut deadline and let the person know that the action must be taken now, because he may not have a chance to act later. This also invokes another psychological motivation in that we don't like our freedom to be restricted. Whenever we are told that we cannot have or do something, we end up desiring it more. So by letting an individual know that he may not get the opportunity to act in the future, you create a larger incentive toward moving now. There is another well-known, though less scrupulous retail store that puts sold tags on items that it wants to get rid of. They do it for this very reason. When we see a sold tag on something, we are unconsciously driven to desire it more. Then when we find out that another just like it may be for sale, we jump on the opportunity to purchase it. Consistent with this law are numerous studies that show that human beings respond to that which is scarce and becoming scarcer. I'm sure you find this to be true in your own life. When something is the latest or hottest and everyone wants one, it becomes that much more desirable. And when the window of opportunity to act continues to shrink, we are driven to desire it that much more. We place value on that which is scarce. Diamonds, gold, and oil are not essential to our well-being, yet they are highly valued, but only because of the perception that they are scarce. Think about it. Platinum is worth more than gold, and gold more than silver, and silver more than copper, all because of how much of it is available to us. 3. use the law of inertia. Sir Isaac Newton first informed us that objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and objects at rest tend to stay at rest. He might well have added that people in motion tend to stay in motion, and people at rest tend to stay at rest. If you are able to get the person moving in the right direction, either physically or mentally, starting with something easy and/or fun, he will likely continue to follow through. Why is this so? Human beings have a strong need for consistency with their actions. Several studies in this area clearly illustrate how effective this psychological factor can be when applied to motivating a person. They show us that when someone is presented with a small request and subsequently does it, he is infinitely more likely to agree to a larger request, the thing that we wanted him to do in the first place, what we really wanted him to do. However, if he is not first presented with and subsequently doesn't complete the smaller request, then he has no unconscious motivation for consistency. Called the foot in the door technique, the following study demonstrates the tendency for people who have first agreed to a small request to comply later with a larger request. Friedman and Fraser, 1966, asked homeowners if they would let them place a huge "Drive Carefully" sign in their front yards. Only 17% gave permission. Other residents, however, were first approached with a smaller request. They were asked to put up a 3-inch "Be a Safe Driver" window sign. Nearly all immediately agreed. When approached a few weeks later, the homeowners were asked to place the gigantic sign on their front lawn. This same group overwhelmingly agreed. 76% consented to having the unsightly sign in their front yards. When we take a small step in one direction, we are driven to maintain a sense of consistency by agreeing to larger requests. Simply, those who had agreed to the smaller request had reshaped their self-concept to include the definition that they were serious about driver safety. Therefore, agreeing to the larger request was just doing something for a cause that they already and firmly believed in. Effective fundraisers know the number one rule for raising money. The easiest person to get a donation from is someone who has given money before. PowerPoint. Music has an impact on the speed of our actions. Consider the study done by Milliman in 1982, which showed that slow-paced music played in grocery stores increases sales because shoppers walk more slowly down the aisles. The flip side of this is also true. Fast-paced music furnishes an unconscious motivation for acting quickly. Robles et al., 1985, found that if fast music is played while people eat, they respond with more bites per minute. If possible, have fast-tempo music playing in the background to increase the feeling and urgency for taking action. To increase the benefits of this law, try speaking faster. You will notice that if you ask someone a question slowly, he will respond the same way, and vice versa. Others will be guided by your sense of urgency, and speaking fast increases this feeling of necessity. 4. Expectation. The law of expectation states that people will do what you expect them to do. Speak and act directly, clearly, and confidently. Also take the appropriate corresponding physical action. Whether it's moving toward the door, picking up a pen, or dialing the phone, people will respond to your assuredness and act accordingly. In other words, you can use more than just words. Use your actions as well to spark action. If, for example, you want someone to follow you, literally, begin walking with a
Dated Boys from Apple Podcasts. Resuming episode 13, Blizzard Days.
Allah Akbar, Akbar Allah Akbar. Hola. Happy ugly. Hello. Happy ugly. Zippity da day. Oh da 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 Ding, 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 ding.
It's us making fun of celebrities, which is what we do.
Echo.
You know what I'm saying?
Lower volume 1.
Oh, damn, it feels good to have niggas all on it. Pause.
Yeah, this is great. Yo, listen, it feels good to be back. Let's do that. You know what I'm saying? Be here.
Miley Cyrus has a remix to Kanye West's Black Skinhead.
Wow. I had to get all the way for that one.
Pause. And it's blocked by UMG on copyright grounds.
What the
I think
fuck?
I'm just
Shout out to UMG.
Pussy haters.
Shout out to